Okay, I believe that we are now live. Boom, 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 boom. Before we do anything, I just want to make damn sure that we are live on my page. Let's have a look at that. I've got my producer next to me, Sovereign. Do look in and tell me if we've gone live there. Are we? Where is it? Oh, there we are. We're live. This is very good. Well, good day, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. It's 10 p.m. here in Bali. I'm just checking to make sure that we are going to a public. Yes, now we're going public. Very good. So greetings, whoever's joining us. We have a few people coming online now. I think the numbers will start to jump up. I'm joined by beloved friends, Elena Bensonoff and Alejandro Ferradas. And as many of you will remember, we convened a couple of weeks ago with our first in this. I think it's going to be a long-standing series. I've got this feeling this is going to really go places because we got such incredible feedback. How do I get the blog coming up so we can read comments? Okay, we do that. Sorry, guys, please excuse me. This is Sovereign. He's producing us, and Debbie's over there making some hot ginger and lemon for my throat, which is not too good today. And hello, Sacha. Hi. Great. So people are coming on board, and we're mounting beautifully. So we're going to give it a couple of minutes whilst I'm getting my proverbial shit together. Elena and Alejandro, for those people coming on, joining us before we kick this show off, which is, of course, the quantum soul frequencies of saints and sinners through the ages, some who are alive, some who are dead. We can't really go through more than about 8 characters at a time with one of these shows because there's so much to go into and there's so much to learn and to triangulate. And actually, the truth of the matter is we could easily take one icon like Mother Teresa or Che Guevara or Bill Gates or Hillary Clinton, and we could actually do a full show on one character, deploying the incredible vectors that Elena and Alejandro, using this incredible scalar technology, are able to build up a holographic reading of the sum total of the frequencies and entanglements that make up the expression of a human being. And this is where it kicks off into strange land. It's not just a living human being, because the nature of scalar is that it is alpha omega. The universal mind, the Akashic record, everything is nested into the now. And this is why, and I've said this last time, and I think it's worth repeating. How do you imagine, I'm talking to the audience now, how do you imagine it is that a Bulgarian gypsy can, read tea leaves and have a famous renown for getting everything right over 30, 40, 50 years? You've got many gypsies that do that. How is it that others can stare into a crystal ball and that becomes their transcendent or transcendental medium for divining the scalar confluence of the Akashic library, the universal mind, the entanglements of all that is in any living moment in time? Why do you think it is that tarot cards have such an incredible accuracy when they're read by people who are standing in some real honor with the craft? Why is it that you can apply any? I Ching is another classic example. Mm-hmm. It's something which is so incredibly telling. And the more you understand your craft, your transcendental craft as a medium, a clairvoyant, a diviner, in the case of Elena and Alejandro, I'm uniquely excited because what they are bringing to the world, and they can explain the background in a moment, is something which is so comprehensive. It's almost terrifying until you get the fact that it's incredibly benevolent. It's the science and the art of bearing mathematical and scientific witness to that which is. That's it. That which self-exists, self-reveals, self-fulfills. So I'll leave my little intro at that. But if you'd be so kind, Elena or Alejandro, just give some background for 3 or 4 minutes to people looking in on what the technology actually is, insofar as you're prepared to explain what it is and what the genesis point was connected to Dr. Hawkins's consciousness metric and so on. I'll leave you at that for 2 or 3 minutes. Please crack on.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for the outpour of incredible positive feedback. And of course, a lot of your curiosity that we are excited to share with all of you what's been going on. So going back a couple of years ago, actually, my background is a pharmacist. I started off as a pharmacist over 25 years ago, board certified in functional medicine. And it wasn't until a few years ago when Alejandro and I got together and we started looking into diseases. Why in some cases there are viruses that would leave a person after working on them, right? Let's say Epstein would go away for a year, but then we would see cases of them spiking back up, and we would want to know of why that was happening in the field of information, right? We were reading scalar waves. We were using technology with 3 different instruments to read that on people. And what we uncovered, and this is how it led us into the work we're doing today, is viruses tend to, or any kind of chronic conditions, tend to overlap and bind to different emotions that reside and get imprinted in our divine field of information. And some of you might have heard of human energy field or biofield, right? So all of it is the same thing. So we began to create lists of different emotions. And then we began to pinpoint what those emotions are that are linked to viruses, right? So that was our first quest. And then we began to realize, there must be a timeline of when these events and situations occur in a person's life when the imprinting begins to happen, right? So then, of course, I've read Dr. Hawkins' book more than 10 years ago. And of course, I loved his scale of consciousness. I actually published it in my book, Holistic Wisdom, Awakening Your Inner Healer. And then we began to realize that Dr. Hawkins created this incredible body of work, but he only focused on one number. And reading thousands of people, we recognize there's so much more than just one number, that what makes up our reality. So Alejandro and I created a system of looking at least at 19 different things, which we will dive with all of you into today, of what constitutes that person's reality. And we also recognize that past, present, and future all exist in the now. And it's about knowing how to retrieve the information from the divine field. And of course, for both of us, it's a double-blind way that we're doing this. We're using 3 different instruments. Alejandro is doing his part, I'm doing my part, and it's not until we hit 100% mark that we know that this is the information that we're needing to retrieve and we're seeking for. So of course, we'll take more of your questions at the end. Anything else, my love, you want to share?
Beautifully said. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And of course, our curious mind has led us into wanting to look at thousands of people, because we wanted to understand, are the stories that we're hearing and the narratives that we're given, are they truly in correspondence to what the divine field is revealing? And in many cases, it wasn't the case. So we're just the truth seekers, and we began this quest of wanting to know the truth, and of course, sharing this truth of this information with all of you. And the part of it, of course, is learning it all together, because it's through our awareness and our own consciousness that we can grow as humanity.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much. Shall I take it from there?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So today we are going to do the quantum scalar soul frequency triangulations of key saintly figures and not so saintly figures. Let's start with, without a question of doubt, the most popular, which is, and let me just call her up here. Sovereign, how do I do this? Do we go to brand and then we call it up here? Boom. Tell me if you can see this, folks. Okay, up comes Princess Diana. You should all be seeing her here, her readings. Diana came to prominence in 1981 when she engaged Prince Charles, as we all know. She's the mother of Prince William and Princes William and Harry. We all know that in 1997, arguably the saddest signature date really in modern history, Diana died in a underground tunnel in Paris in a car crash, and that obviously has been shrouded in a lot of mystery. There are a lot of people who apparently justifiably think that she was murdered and that there was a Sabbatean agenda connected to that. That's no great secret. I'm certainly one of those people who finds that the most compelling. But nonetheless, she left an incredible mark on humanity in the last century. And in many respects, she represented an icon at the civilizational level, which is we've never really seen before. Very, very saintly. Her work against landmines, her work with mentally handicapped, her work with kids was legend. Her own frailties and vulnerabilities were so incredibly poignant and beautiful. And in a sense, that vulnerability that she wore throughout her life was a signature and a hallmark of all of our vulnerability and the humanness. And in a sense, one could say that she was the defining line, the duende line between humans and that archonic imperial crown hegemony bullshit that we're all now kind of moving away from. Old imperial forces of control, supremacy, dominion, manipulation, and so on. In a very real sense, Diana is the archetype, the Madonna, the Magdalene, the Isis, the one that came to redeem all of us from that paradigm. To which end, I think we're going to go into this now, Elena and Alejandro, but let's look at her numbers. Please do the readings from here.
Yes, she was truly a beautiful human being. And I think she touched, as we know, millions of people's hearts and souls. So Princess Diana incarnated at the frequency of 500. And we look at those frequencies because it gives us an insight into how a person enters this life, right? She was born at 500, and before she died, her overall vibrational frequency was at 700, which is a frequency of enlightenment. So she was an enlightened being in many ways, and she brought so much light, therefore, to humanity. She viewed health through the lens of love, 510, finances through joy, 550, personal growth, I like to call it, was her guiding light, because she had this enlightened relationship of 925 with her personal growth. Of course, her philanthropy translated so beautifully because she also had this enlightened relationship with sharing and giving at 900. Her creativity was at 300, right? So creativity has to do with inspiration and action. So for her, she was in the neutrality approaching willingness. Relationships, she viewed through the lens of love, 500. Again, no wonder that she was named the Princess of Hearts, because she embodied that so beautifully. All right, let's see. She enjoyed, and again, we tested her enjoying her life from a divine perspective a year before she died, because of course we can go through different stages of life and see how much a person is enjoying embodying their divine role. And she 90% she enjoyed playing her role in her ego. So this is how much ego participated in her daily decision making, and it was 65%. So of course she had this, I would say, as we always share, ego is an important ingredient, but in her case, she learned to really dance with her ego, and it didn't overpower her decision making. And therefore you could see her heart shining through so beautifully. She was 86% in her integrity, and this is out of 100. So when you guys see percentages, this is from 0 to 100. She was 92% self-aware, aware of what was happening outside and inside of herself. And therefore, she was 98% clear. So she was very clear of what she was here to do. She was 100% in her compassion, again, reinforcing that she was truly the princess of the hearts for so many people in the world. And she was 100% in alignment with her divine purpose and her personal purpose. She was truly a beautiful human being. Mm-hmm. An angel. You know, when we read her, she felt like an angel to us.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
Beautiful.
I've seen quite a few of the charts that you've done for people, and I must say, stunning to see her numbers. When you get into the sort of 700 range at the sort of standard frequency level, I mean, what is the threshold of enlightenment?
The threshold, well, it begins at the stage of 700. So it's 700 to 1000. And 1000 is a fully integrated being. And we see 1000 in a few avatars that we've read in our vibrational revelations.
Right.
So,
Okay. We'll come back to her because we're going to do some comparisons shortly. But let's move on to our next subject, Mahatma Gandhi. So Gandhi, without a doubt, the most famous Indian in history, certainly in modern history. He trained as a lawyer at the Inner Temple in London and was called to the bar at the age of 22, really young. And that was in 1891. And he moved to South Africa in 1893, stayed on there for about 21 years, got really involved in the whole apartheid story. He became a householder, raised a family, and was really at that time known for nonviolent resistance in his campaign for civil rights. And that was known as a satyagraha, which is to this day really the term that you associate with Mahatma Gandhi, which was protesting and resistance, but never ever resorting to violence in that context. He set about organizing peasants and farmers and urban laborers, moving against excessive land taxes and discrimination. It's not the first time you're going to hear about saintly people becoming saints because they took that position in life, which was essentially to stand between people of the soil and these outrageous taxes. I mean, a bit later on, we get to Lady Godiva, and she's very much the same kind of character. So Gandhi led nationwide campaigns for easing poverty and what have you. He became very famous for being naked, except for his loincloth, of course, and his staff. And at the end of the day, he got assassinated, as we all know, in India in 1948, and he was shot with 3 bullets in the chest, and that was because he essentially got involved in the politicking of the day, connected to Pakistan and the emancipation of India from the British and all the rest of it. Bottom line is, he's come to simply represent that beautiful singular point of humility as a good human, somebody who did not chase the coin, did not chase influence or affluence. At least that's how we think of the man. You know, the weaver's loom, the loincloth, being naked, wearing his little spectacles, and moving around, speaking the same simple, beautiful truths to power. So an amazing icon in that sense. And let's just see now how he actually shaped up to your scalar soul frequency readings. I'll put his plate now. There we go. So let's take a look at him. Over to you.
Yes, Mahatma Gandhi completely embodied his message, 650. So his overall vibrational frequency was at 650, which is the level of peace. Incredible. He was born at the frequency of 450, which is the high intellect. So he was given a gift of having the high intelligence. And of course, in utero, he incarnated at the frequency of 700. And we look at in utero and birth because we want to see how the soul wants to express itself throughout the life, and the full potential, of course, that it has the ability to achieve and in many cases transcend. So a lot of times when you see the difference between incarnation and birth frequency, this has to do with there was an experience or perhaps several experiences his mom was undergoing. So it could have impacted him to have his frequency dropped. But he's done so beautifully because he embodied peace. Now, health he viewed through the lens of 625, which is also peace. So he had this peaceful relationship, which is important to keep in mind between body, mind, and soul. So he lived it for himself. Finances he viewed through the lens of 200, which is courage. So exactly what Sacha just shared. This was absolutely, I would say, not on his mind, the least important thing probably in his entire chart. Personal growth. So how committed was he, Mahatma Gandhi, to personal growth? And he was fully committed because his frequency, his relationship with personal growth is at 950, which is a level of enlightenment. So it also shows us that when a person is that high in personal growth, not only are they committed to their own enlightenment, but it's about sharing the enlightened message with the world. And of course, he did that so beautifully. Creativity, Mahatma Gandhi viewed through the lens of 650, which is peace. Philanthropy, right? This is his relationship of sharing and giving, was at the frequency of 600. Again, peace. There's so many peace frequencies throughout his chart. Relationships, Mahatma Gandhi viewed through the lens of peace, 650. And again, peace, for those of you that are new to this series, begins at 600 until 699. Enlightenment starts from 700 to 1,000. Intuition for Mahatma Gandhi, I would say, is a divine relationship, because it's also this enlightened relationship at 900. So he viewed or he received these powerful messages for humanity, and therefore he was 100% also in his compassion, which you could see so beautifully. He was completely against violence. He was 25% in his ego. This is one of the lowest egos that we've measured. There's a couple of other characters, of course, that we did as well, but his ego was so low. So you could just see how his ego didn't really participate much in his decision-making. He was 100% in his integrity, 100% self-aware, and therefore 100% clear about his mission, his message, and everything he was doing. He was 99% aligned with his divine purpose and his personal purpose. And he was 99% in his joy. So whatever he was doing, absolutely from a divine perspective, brought him joy. Beautiful.
Okay, great stuff. So just looking at Diana's chart next to Mahatma Gandhi's chart. So she was, her core frequency was 700, his 650, which means in a sense that she was presumably more evolved spiritually, consciously. Is that what it signifies?
Overall, slightly, but again, it depends on different areas of their life, because we have to look at all these different frequencies that make up, right, the overall frequency. But yes, overall, I mean, she was more enlightened, but he's not less enlightened. I mean, he was walking his own divine path.
But so are you saying that somebody can have a core frequency of 700, let's say, and have a whole bunch of other vectors that are pretty rotten? Is that possible?
That hardly ever happens.
Hardly ever happens.
Right.
Come on, I need one example.
Okay, so we've seen it actually where energy purity, which we're not touching upon today, but energy purity can be impacted, and that has to do with entities overtaking that person. So that could impact. Yes.
Fascinating. Okay, and in the ego, Gandhi was 25%, and Diana 65%. So where does that disparity come from? Is that because she was more under certain pressures to define herself and define her character and fight against rage against the system, the establishment? Would that explain the ego bit in her being higher than someone like Gandhi when her soul frequency was actually higher?
I would say yes. And in his case, I mean, he didn't care what he wore, right? He was, as you said, naked, just being barefoot on the streets with every human being. He didn't care to define himself and label himself, because ego, as Alejandro likes to say, is the resistance that we have that
Right.
comes through us. So he didn't have much resistance.
And Gandhi's divine purpose is 99%. Diana's was 100%. His 99%. What kind of element are we dealing with in someone's life when they've got such remarkable figures? His integrity 100, self-awareness 100, clarity 100, compassion 100, divine purpose 99. Everything else super high. What kind of factor or element might thwart that 100% divine purpose in your view?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually see this happening. So because he incarnated at a frequency of 700 and he was born at 450, so 700 gives you like your potential, of course, that you can transcend. He didn't fully go into his 700 frequency, whereas Diana actually transcended her birth frequency. She transcended her 500 frequency. So that would be the full divine alignment. And maybe I don't know why he didn't fully achieve 100% his personal goal, but I'm sure his goal, right, which has to do with personal purpose, was really the message that he was so strongly wanting to give to humanity, right?
Okay, very good. And another question on him. Intuition 900. I mean, that's remarkable, right?
Amazing.
900 is super enlightened.
Yes.
Okay. How is that intuition doesn't serve him on the day of an assassination, for instance?
Because he was fully, I feel he was fully present in the now and in his message to humanity. He wasn't necessarily, maybe he was utilizing his intuition for his message. He was the messenger.
Okay, good. Very good. All right. Well, let's move on because we've got quite a few more to go and we're almost half past the hour. I told you it was going to be like this. Okay. Grigori Rasputin, one of my favorite characters in history. So Rasputin was the famous Russian mystic, the self-proclaimed holy man who befriended the family of the Tsar Nicholas, the last emperor of Russia. And he gained a hell of a lot of influence in the imperial court in Russia. He was born to a peasant family in Siberia. He looked like an absolute, wino. He had a religious conversion experience after a pilgrimage to a monastery in 1897. He's thereafter was described as a wandering monk. He held no official position in the Russian Orthodox Church. He became a society figure, presumably because he was out there selling his snake oil to people and was probably very accurate. In late 1906, he began acting as a formal healer for the imperial Tsarist family in Russia, notably to the son of Tsar Nicholas Alexei, who suffered from hemophilia. So Rasputin thereby became a divisive character in the court and seen by some as being a mystic, a visionary, and a prophet, and by others as being a complete charlatan, a bit like me, the charlatan bit. He then went on, his powers continued. The high point of his power was in 1915 when Tsar Nicholas left St. Petersburg to oversee Russian armies fighting for World War I, which were increasing both of increased both Alexandra, Queen Alexandra, or the Tsarina Alexandra, and Rasputin's influence. There was a lot of hoo-ha going on at that time in society, but he was having an affair with her, blah, blah, blah. And he became very unpopular as a result of those rumors. In the early morning of the 30th of December, 1916, Rasputin was assassinated by a group of conservative noblemen who opposed his influence over the royal family, the imperial royal family. Historians often suggest that his terrible reputation helped discredit the Tsarist government and thereby helped precipitate the overthrow of the Romanov dynasty. So there's kind of inferences there that he was a bit of a plant to come in and disrupt the kind of dignity of the imperial royal family, which he apparently did. I've been to the place in Russia where he was hung, drawn, and quartered, and drowned, and shot, and stabbed. I mean, they did everything, and he wouldn't die. He was famous for not dying, but eventually they did dispose of him. I'll call his chart up, and please walk us through this amazing character. There he is. There he is.
In character, yes. Okay, so Rasputin was incarnated at the frequency of 200 and born at the frequency of 200. So he was born and incarnated at the frequency of courage. As of his lifetime, over a lifetime frequency, that was 250, which is acceptance, neutrality. It's what I like to call a comfort zone, a known territory. Health he viewed through the lens of 500, which is actually the highest number on his entire chart. And this has to do with his own body, mind, and soul connection. And I think this is where he drew his power from understanding himself so well. Finances he viewed through the lens of 125. 125 is desire. It's a desire that is never fulfilled. Creativity, again, viewed through the lens of 125, desire. It's this, Dr. Hawkins refers to desire of an addict, okay? Like a hungry monster. Relationships he viewed through the lens of 50, apathy. So he was very much disconnected, created a shield. And it's a frequency that, Sacha, we've quite often discussed in our episodes, the 50 frequency, right?
Yeah.
It's an easy place to manipulate people from. When you have a shield of indifference, you don't care, but you're going to go after your own agenda. Personal growth he viewed through the lens of 125, which again is desire, this hungry, unfulfilled monster. Philanthropy viewed through the lens of 50, which is again apathy, right? So whatever he shared, it had to do with manipulation for his own agenda. Intuition he viewed through the lens of 350. 350 is acceptance. Now he had 97% having fun, joy, playing his divine role. He was 99% in the now, 100% in his ego, 22% in his integrity. So forget about his integrity. Self-awareness at 97%, and therefore his clarity was 99%. He was 100% on his divine purpose and 100% on his personal purpose. And his compassion was at 32%.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So just looking here, again, integrity 22%. Okay. And amazing with these characters, these kind of dodgy characters. So this is not a man you would trust, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, but would you does he have any kind of mystical capabilities? Is there any possibility that any part of him was legitimate with those numbers, or is it all pretty? It's all awful, isn't it? All of it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: the health part, 500. So it gives us an insight that he was very well aware of body, mind, and soul connection. So that was the driving force for him. Now, there's many historical figures that we've read, actually, even to this day, who can vibrate at 55 and 50s and have 125 in their chart. And right now, they're actually powerful messengers to the world. They're channeling information. And actually, we have a person like that we will be sharing today. So the thing is, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what exactly are they channeling? Are they channeling low vibrational entities, right?
Right.
Or not? So in this case, I mean, he had a magnetic personality because of this 125. People with 125 frequency, this desire, right? They project it out. And it's like this never ending, hungry, addictive kind of personality. And if you are seeking or you're unfulfilled in any way, absolutely, you're going to be addicted to his personality.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, he played his role
you carry on.
very well.
Yeah, he played his role extremely well. Yes.
He did.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm fascinated by that. I always figured that somebody to die in such a horrible way, he must have had some real authenticity to him, you know, but apparently not. Apparently he was an absolute shyster. All right, let's move on. So next up, saintly figures, Julian Assange. Oh, before I do this, can I just turn to our audience and just explain, we've been deplatformed from YouTube in the last week. So if you can, please do share this on your Facebook page. We're trying to get the numbers out there. We're trying to do our bit to bring about paradigmatic shift in the world, and we're not going to get much help from Silicon Valley. We'll move on to Julian Assange. Everyone knows him for WikiLeaks, essentially. I'm not going to wax lyrical on Julian Assange. WikiLeaks came to international attention in 2010 when it published a series of leaks provided by the U.S. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning. If you all remember, Chelsea was a man, became a woman. These leaks included the Baghdad airstrike, collateral murder, the Afghan war logs, the Iraq war logs, all of this, but going back to 2010. Now, as an activist, I can tell you, that is so important, the work that man and his organization did at that time with those disclosures. In the first instance, when it comes to things like national security and all of these secrecy clauses that the military couch themselves in, that's a crock of shit. That's nonsense. a good man like Assange had a duty of care as a human being. Forget military oaths, forget the corruption behind the veil. He had a duty of care as a good analyst and a good activist to release all of those papers, which of course ultimately led to Pizzagate 5 years ago, 2016, and the Podesta laptop and the emails. That story has not gone away. The Hillary Clinton's emails, that has not gone away. That story is returning on force in the next few weeks. You can bet. In 2016, WikiLeaks released the documents from the Democratic National Committee showing that Hillary Clinton's campaign had tried to undercut Bernie Sanders. Now, essentially, many people, myself included, as activists and analysts of a sort, regard that as being the axiomatic point that threw Clinton out of the game and helped Trump's ascendancy to the presidency. Obviously, he then went, the establishment went after Assange. They tried to take him down on, by best accounts, highly spurious, trumped-up rape charges. That's what they do to good people in this world. I think we're all grown up enough to know that. They will try to hook into you any which way they can. And when they can hook into you, they'll go for your bond. They'll go for your trust, which is the living body, Mr. Julian Assange, and they will send Interpol and the forces, the draconian forces, to get you and lock you up. He tried to thwart that by getting asylum at the Ecuadorian embassy, which he managed to do for some years in London and stayed there for some years. And then, of course, the political pressures on Ecuador became too strong, and the next incumbent, and may it rest upon his conscience for eternity, handed Assange over to the authorities. And the authorities drove up to the Ecuadorian embassy one fine day in a Serco van. Okay, if you see that white van that went to pick up and bundle Julian Assange in, very small letters on the back of the van, Serco. We did readings with Elena and Alejandro on Serco a few weeks ago, and all I can tell you is that from what they've told me, that was the single worst reading of anything ever. I think it was a 1, you told us, on a scale of 1 to 1,000. Like absolute destructivity. Do you want to speak to that for a moment?
I don't even remember because there was so many.
We did CIA, we did the Federal Reserve, we did all of them.
Yes,
but
yes.
Serco was the one who was shocked. You were really shocked, you guys, because you said that across the board was just 111. It was like the baseline, evil enterprise. Mm-hmm. Anyway, long story short, that it was a Serco van that snatched and exfiltrated, took him and locked him up. Now, we don't know if he's still ostensibly still incarcerated in Belmarsh prison, reportedly in ill health. The last person we know that went to see him was Pamela Anderson, and she has tried to appeal since that time. There's all sorts of talk about him being actually on ice and essentially being kept in the wings for bringing into military tribunals once the axe comes down on the Biden, Harris, Obama, Bush, Clinton crime cartel and their cultural Marxist plans for North America, all of which is coming down the pike roundabout now. But that's a bit of background on Julian Assange. A decision on extradition is expected on the 4th of January, 2021. That means extradition to the United States, where ostensibly he's facing charges for espionage or whatever crap they've dreamt up. But let's call his chart up. Here it is. Please, let's go through his numbers.
Okay. Julian Assange was incarnated at the frequency of 450. He was born at the frequency of 300. So as of today, his overall frequency is 450, which is reason, high intellect, mind. So he's capable of going through very complex, large amounts of data information. So of course, no wonder that he was able to come up with WikiLeaks. Now, finances he views through the lens of 30. This is as of today, right? Overall, 30. So this is shame, right?
Guilt.
Oh, guilt. Creativity he views through the lens of 700. So he has this absolutely enlightened relationship with his own creativity, which is inspiration in action. Relationships he views through the lens of 450, which is reason. So he's very reasonable. He, of course, incorporates his mind in making decisions as far as relating, how he relates to other people. So I would say he's an open person as far as relationships. Personal growth he views through the lens of 375, which is acceptance. Philanthropy he views through the lens of 400, reason. Again, there's a lot of mind in his chart. Intuition, he has a 500 frequency, which is the relationship of love. So he has this loving relationship with his intuition, which means that he trusts his intuition and he takes action based upon the intuitive messages he receives for himself. As of today, he enjoys his divine role 44% of the time. In the now, that means how present he is in the now, is 46%. Integrity, his integrity is at 54%. Ego, 67%. Self-awareness, 92%. Clarity, 83%. He's playing out his divine role at 98% alignment, and his personal purpose, he is aligned with 73%.
You're muted.
Forgive me. What do you think is remarkable about his chart?
Remarkable to me is this is the man, well, first of all, who is completely very intuitive, definitely very intuitive, very creative. And a lot of his decisions are made from this frequency of, Hawkins referred to Einstein at the similar frequency, 499. So this man is highly intelligent. He's definitely not here to manipulate people. So if we see 50s in the chart, especially in relationship and philanthropy area, that would give us a red flag. Okay, this person is definitely manipulating other people. In this case, it's absolutely not the case. He is what he says he is, right? And of course, it also shows us that as of right now, he's not enjoying himself at all. He's at 44%, and his personal purpose is out of alignment, of course, because he's in jail.
Yeah.
But his divine role, he's playing really well. So he's almost 100% in alignment with his divine role, which is something we decide before we incarnate in this dimension. So he's playing out whatever he was meant to play out.
But are you suggesting that everyone in prison is not going to be in alignment with their own purpose?
I don't know if that's the case, because Gandhi was in prison too, right? And he was.
And Nelson Mandela. Have you done Mandela's chart by any chance?
We have. It's in one of our episodes.
What were his numbers like? Can you remember offhand, more or less? Were they good numbers?
Yeah.
Mandela?
Amazing.
Good numbers,
yes, amazing.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. I've got some folks writing in about Serco, just so you know. A lot of people recognize that. Everyone's like, royal family, royal family. Well, yeah, good luck. You know, all roads lead to Rome via the Crown of England. Prince William is the head of Serco. Michelle Reed's saying that. I've heard that. I've heard that. Don't know. I don't know how that can be validated, but I have heard that. Are Trump and Julian Assange related? I'm not going to go there. I have no idea. I want to move on to our next subject, who I think is arguably, please excuse me, is arguably the most interesting that we're going to do today. And that is this. I've got a cough. I'm so sorry. Sorry, guys. This is John of God. In my view, one of the most toxic characters on the face of God's earth. And honestly, I've been saying this for 20 years. The first time I heard the man's name, it put a shiver down my spine. And then, of course, when one learns that Oprah Winfrey is championing him, well, that puts an even bigger shiver down my spine. I know that you've said she's got some good numbers. And at some point, you guys are have to go and reconcile that for me, because from what I know of Oprah Winfrey's enabling of the status quo and so many of the most deviant archetypes in our world, I need for myself to understand how it is that she can come out with any kind of glowing numbers, given what she does and what she knows, and what she's been involved with the Bushes and with the Clintons and with the Harvey Weinsteins and all the rest of them. I just don't understand how a woman who's supposed to be so intuitive and loving and compassionate and what have you hangs out with these characters and fails to see the frequency of those characters that she spent really a lifetime hanging around, not least of which was John of God, known also as João de Deus, a Brazilian medium psychic surgeon, convicted sex offender, arrested a couple of years ago, based in Brazil, where he ran the famous Spiritual Healing Center. He's received a hell of a lot of media on CNN, ABC, and of course Oprah Winfrey's show, amongst others. Various folks have exposed his healing procedures as involving nothing more than carnival tricks. There's evidence that the benefits that were reported by patients are nothing more than placebo effects. In 2018, that was 2 years ago, after over 600, check that out, over 600 accusations of sex abuse. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine 6 accusations of sex abuse coming at you? 600? Next level. He turned himself into the police. There was nowhere to run. Where's he going to go? December 2019, he was sentenced to 19 years and 4 months for the rape of 4 different women. On January 2020, he was sentenced to an additional 40 years in prison for raping another 5 women. That's the 3rd conviction of the accused. The sentence adds up to 63 years. And again, that was only under a dozen of the charges. So when the 600 are read, the guy's going to be in prison for 3,000 years. He says he was told by his spirit guides that he must expand his work to reach more people. And then his legend began. Much of his income came from selling passion flower preparations. The company, which bears his initials JTF, markets the drug and is registered in the name of his wife. I'm going to just jump to the rest. When called for a spiritual surgery by John of God, patients are offered the choice of visible or invisible operations. If they select an invisible operation or are younger than 18 years of age or older than 52, they are directed to sit in a room and meditate. And John of God says that spiritual physicians can perform surgery on the actual patient via a surrogate when the actual patient is unable to make the trip. Anyway, long story short, the man crashed and burned in a very bad way. And the stories that we've heard are a lot worse than just raping women. We're talking about rape factories, young girls, underage women raped by this man as breeders. Now, this is something well known in ritual satanic circles, well known. Breeding, raping young, even pubescent girls and teenage girls as part of a kind of factory of insemination. And then what happens to the progeny, to the babies that come out of those young girls and are used ritualistically. So this is very, very real stuff. And one imagines that this particular venal character was involved all the way through. Let's take a look at John of God's numbers, and you can possibly help triangulate his character a bit more. Can you see him there?
Yes, thank you. John of God. Well, his overall vibrational frequency is at 55, which is the level of apathy. Right? As Elena mentioned earlier, that most people that vibrate at this level have the tendency to manipulate. Right? Now, we measured his frequency from October 2018, right before he was captured.
Interesting.
Excuse me. And it was 100, which is the level of fear, right? So went from apathy to fear. Mm-hmm. And then we were curious. We thought, okay, was his frequency any different when Oprah featured him, you know? And actually his frequency in March was in March of 2013, and it was at 55 as well. Wow. So it really wasn't any different, right? It just kicked up to the level of fear, be fear as being in driver's seat when he was, obviously knew that he was getting in trouble, right? Or something coming down the pipe. You want to say anything?
No.
Okay.
No.
You're just breathing?
Yeah, I'm just breathing.
Okay. He incarnated at the level of reason, high intellect, which is 400. And he was born at the frequency of 225, which is the level of courage. The level of courage goes from 200 up to 249, and then at 250, it becomes neutrality, right? So he definitely was impacted by whatever it was that his mother was experiencing during pregnancy. So it dropped from 400 a utero down to 225 at birth. Now, his health was at 205, which is the level of courage. Finances, 125, which is the level of desire. And this is, in this case particularly, would say that it has to do with desire as of addiction, an addictive personality, of course. An addiction could be for power, attention, and combined with other well-known addictions, of course, up to this point. Now, creativity, it was 500, which is he had a loving relationship with his creativity. He was very creative. In relationships, it was 55. So that tells you he's vibrating at the level of 55, level of apathy. His relationships are 55. More than likely, he was establishing rather personal business relationships with the intention of manipulate those relationships to fit whatever agenda he had in mind, right? His personal growth at 125. Again, the 125, the desired as an addiction, is linked to his finances at 125 also. Philanthropy at 25, which is the level of shame. So if he was ever involved in any activities related to philanthropy, it was really rather sharing money or his own time. It came from, the level of shame. It was not that he was giving freely with it from his heart. It was definitely had to do with his personal agenda as well. Intuition at 350, which is acceptance. He was, we could say, intuitive, not fully trusted his intuition, especially for his personal endeavors. But yes, he was able definitely to receive messages and utilize his intuition. But in this case, because of the rest of his numbers, 125 in finances, 55 in relationship, 125 in personal growth, and vibrating at the level of apathy at 55, was using his intuition for not such a good causes, of course, right? With intention to manipulate, actually. And in the joy, as of how much he was enjoying his divine role, is 12%. So it's extremely low, one of the lowest numbers we've found so far after reading thousands of people.
Yeah.
In the now or in the present moment, he is 17%. Also very disconnected with his inner being, inner self, inner God, however you want to call it, not present at all. Thinking it has a lot to do that, with his current situation also. And that gives us 100% in the ego, which is, we always say that, the ego in its own vibrates at the level of 400, which is reason, high intellect. And it is an important ingredient, contributes to create contrast, which is crucial for the human experience. But when someone reaches the level of 100, then it is, which is often found in narcissistic individuals, you go from the 400 level of the ego down to the 75 level of the ego, which is grief. So then is when it becomes toxic, right? When it takes really full control of your decision-making process.
Understood. Forgive me. We need to move through these numbers a little faster because we're nearly an hour and we've only got half through the charts.
Okay.
So let's try and get through them and triangulate the most important nodes. Carry on.
Okay. Integrity, he is at 19%. Self-awareness, 95%. Clarity, 100%. His divine purpose is at 18%. His personal purpose is at 73%. And now his compassion is at 18%. Another very, very low number. Yes.
So, I mean, just extraordinary because compassion, 18%, philanthropy, 25%. I mean, these are just diabolical numbers for a man of God. 55, as you pointed out to us, I think is the same frequency reading as the coronavirus. Is that correct?
That's correct. Exactly the same, yes.
So there is nothing that I can see in this man's chart that is, there is just nothing positive about it.
Well, the number of intuition at 350 is positive, but because of the rest of his numbers, the intuition was not being utilized for the good of humanity.
And creativity also.
And creativity
Yeah.
as well. Yes.
So what would his intuition have been deployed toward in his case?
When you're vibrating at the level of apathy at 55, it is, I would say, impossible to channel a high vibrational being. You know, you more than likely you can channel a very someone that is expert in the field of medicine, which now you can find even doctors alive at that level practicing, so-called medicine, but it's actually, against humanity's well-being.
Right, understood. Wow. Okay. So takeaway from John of God is that he's arguably the worst reading we've had today. Who would you rather trust your kids with, Rasputin or John of God?
I think neither one.
Yes.
But the one takeaway I think from John of God, and we'll come back to this too, is this is a man who came at 400 and he made a decision. Either he was overtaken by entities or whatever happened to him to go into 55 frequency. And this is why he's out of alignment with his divine purpose.
Right.
He's not living what he was meant to live out.
Okay. I'm going to quickly jump on now to Lady Godiva, and I'm going to just run through this. For those watching who are familiar with Lady Godiva, great story, historical figure. She was the wife of Leofric, the Earl of Mercia in England, back in the day, in the 11th century. In 1043, they were generous benefactors to religious houses. In 1043, Leofric founded and endowed a Benedictine monastery on the site of the nunnery destroyed by the Danes in 1016. The long story short is that he was a very wealthy man. At a given point, he was levying taxes against his people. And Godiva, his wife, was against that fact, and she was arguing for him to be more benevolent. And he essentially said, she said something like, I think the story, maybe I've got it written down, but the story was essentially that she appealed again and again to her husband, who obstinately refused to lower the taxes. And at last, weary of her entreaties, he said that he would grant her request if she would strip naked and ride on a horse through the streets of the town. Well, she apparently took him up on his word, and after issuing a proclamation that all persons should stay indoors and shut their windows, she rode through the town completely naked, except for her long hair covering. And of course, another interesting story, just one person in the town, a tailor, ever afterwards known as Peeping Tom, disobeyed her proclamation in what is the most famous instance of voyeurism in history. So after her husband's death in 1057, she lived on until sometime between the Norman Conquest, 1066 and 1086. She's mentioned in the Doomsday Book as one of the few Anglo-Saxons and the only woman to remain a major landholder shortly after the conquest. She apparently died between 1066 and 1086. But the story being basically that she was a noble woman who was a gracious one and a kind one, and she was arguing against unfair taxes imposed by her own husband and called his bluff, rode naked through the town, and had those taxes eradicated. So a pretty saintly thing to do, I think, in the 11th century, which is why I asked you to do her reading. So here she is. Let's quickly run through her chart.
Yeah, it's interesting because her numbers do not show saint, but okay. She incarnated at the frequency of 50, born at a frequency of 50. I would say she's one of the most consistent people we've read. Her overall vibrational frequency is 50, which is again apathy. Health, she viewed through the lens of courage. 200, finances. This is the only high number in her chart. 540, that brought her joy. Creativity, 55, relationships, 50, personal growth, 50, philanthropy, 50, intuition, 50. She enjoyed her role 100%. She was 100% present in the now, 100% in her ego, 95% in her integrity, which means she absolutely followed and was loyal to her own beliefs at 50 frequency. Keep in mind, self-awareness, 97, clarity, 100%, divine purpose, 100%, personal purpose, 100%. Her compassion, she was only compassionate at 34%. So I would say she absolutely played the role in the shadows. And it's interesting that history portrayed her as a saint.
Well, interesting. Maybe she just wanted to ride naked on a horse through town because she had that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. So nothing saintly about the woman's numbers from what we can see. Once again, 50, 50, 50, 55, 50, 50. Wow. Remarkable. Clarity, 100%. Ego, 100%. Divine purpose, 100%.
Yeah.
Incredible. No redeeming features at all by best accounts other than her long hair. So that's it. Lady Godiva is no longer one of my archetypal heroines. I'm going to consign her to the flames. All right. Now, next one. This for me is the one I would like to spend an hour on at some point, or 2 hours. To my mind, the single most dangerous creature that has lived in modern history. And by modern history, what I mean is in the last 500 years. I've done an awful lot of study of history. And I've studied the source code of evil, as I understand it, wickedness in this world, taking it all the way back to pre-Sumerian times, Babylonian times, Mesopotamian times, times of the Venetian black nobility, times of the Caesars of Rome and the blood cultism that issued from that, all the way through to the time of Ignatius Loyola. Now, I believe that Ignatius Loyola is the signature of pure evil in our lives today. All the wickedness of war and disease and poverty, in my humble view, stems essentially from the preserve of Ignatius Loyola, what he did with the Society of Jesus, militarizing Christianity, converting Christianity into pure black magic and a source code, a renewed source code of evil. The Council of Nicaea did a good job back in 325 AD, but Ignatius Loyola really weaponized it. Now, the interesting thing about Ignatius Loyola was, I don't know if you know this, but so he's the founder of the Jesuits, okay? The Jesuits. The Jesuits are the black papacy. These are the devils that run the Vatican complex, that run the crowns of Europe, that run the Federal Reserve, that run the CIA, Mossad, that run Serco, that run CNN, and all of the syndicated mainstream media is contained, again, by the Khazarian mobsters, who are all proxies and placeholders of the central banksters, the usual lot. We don't even need to mention them, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, and all of whom themselves are proxies for the Payzers and the Dragoons and Sassoons and Kaduris, other families that people know nothing about, who are the true black nobility in a sense, still operating today. And behind that, you'll find the hand of the Jesuits. So for me, Ignatius Loyola's numbers by far are the most important ones for me to understand, and I think for people to see. So I'm going to call his chart up, and let's spend a bit of time on Ignatius Loyola, the father of Jesuits and the father Jesuiticism and the father of the black papacy and the source code of evil in our day. Please, over to you.
Yes. His overall frequency is 55, the level of apathy. He incarnated at the level of 55 and was born at the level of 55 as well. Very consistent too. like Lady Godiva. Health was a 55, finances at 50, creativity at 50, relationships 50, personal growth 50, philanthropy 50, intuition 55. Now he enjoyed his divine role 100% of the time. He embodied it fully. He was 100% in the present moment or in the now. He was 100% in the ego. He was 100% in his integrity. He was 100% for self-awareness, 100% for clarity, and he was 100% aligned with your divine and personal purpose. Now, when it comes to compassion, he was at 3%. 3%.
Okay, so does that make me a prophet or what? I mean, is that the worst reading? Is that the worst reading you've seen in a human being?
When it comes to compassion, especially, yes.
I mean, Sacha, I didn't know much about him when I had, we had the discussion right before. I was like, I had no idea who this person is, but this is like pure evil. And then, of course, you said, "Oh my God, thank God you confirmed everything I know."
Yeah, because all my life's work in the last 20 years would have been null and voided if he turned out with great soul frequency numbers. You guys have no idea how much I've been afraid that you were going to come on and say Saint Ignatius Loyola was a saintly man. I'd go, that's it. I give up. I'm out of the game. Good. Well, again, folks, have a glance there. And let me remind you, it's 55 out of 1,000. Those numbers on the left are numbers out of 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not the same as the numbers on the right, which are percentages. So quite incredible there. So to all of you who are Jesuits, we see you. There is no excuse for taking that goddamned oath. It is the source code of evil. I don't know if you guys have read the Jesuit oath, but I'll tell you, I would really appreciate it if when you had the time, if you could deploy the divination, the scalar divination against the Jesuit oath itself, because all popes have to take this oath. If you want to understand what governs the dominion of evil through all of the bloodletting and the wars and the disease and the poverty in the last few hundred years, it's connected to the Jesuit oath. So that's the track, that's the oath. That thing is what's invested with the evil intention. And it would be fascinating to hear from you what the Jesuit oath's reading was. So maybe next time we'll just round back in on that piece. Thank you for that. I'm going to jump quickly to Hugh Hefner, the founder of the Playboy Empire, the dirty old man who lived in the Playboy Mansion for 352 years or whatever it was, screwing every nubile young female that flew into his cobweb. A nice enough character, apparently, according to people who knew him. I know many people who knew him, hung out with him over the years. Fun guy, raconteur, but curious character, obviously driven by appetite, one imagines. Very thorough, also very clever. He was a bloody good editor, really good editor and writer, thinker, intellectual at a given point. So the interesting character. And again, I put him up there as a fun bit because Hugh Hefner, he's obviously not a saint, but just give a quick run through of his numbers and tell us what you make of that.
Yes, his overall frequency is 125, the level of desire. He incarnated at the level of 125 and was born at the level of 125.
Oh, there's a mistake on the screen here. It says 200 and 250. It's all actually 125.
Sorry, guys. Okay, our mistake at our end.
That's
Yes,
okay.
it's okay.
He was the most embodiment of
desire,
of addiction.
Of addiction.
Wow, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Health is at 125.
Yeah.
Finances 55. Creativity 540. So it makes total sense what you just said about him.
His writing,
how creative he was.
Yeah.
Writing. Relationships 55. Personal growth 250. Intuition 55. Philanthropy 55. Now, he enjoyed his role 100% of the time. He was in the present moment or in the now 95%. In ego was 100% in his ego.
Right.
His integrity was 9%.
9,
He
like,
was
yeah,
definitely
9.
totally out of integrity.
Yeah.
Self-awareness was 95%. Clarity, 100%. And he was 100% in alignment with his divine and personal purpose.
Yeah.
So, and his compassion was at 89%, a lot higher than Ignatius of Loyola.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, amazingly, the integrity at 9%, one imagines he spent about 50 or 60 years having to tell all these women that he loved them more than the others. He was very practiced at bad integrity. Thank you. That was really a really interesting takeaway on Hugh Hefner. So the most redeeming feature about him was his creativity.
Yes.
Yes.
And hey, he was creative. Anyone who carves that kind of life for himself, fully in alignment with his purpose, completely aware of what he's doing, and defines his reality against all odds, against all moral frameworks, establishes himself. This is how I want to live. This is my dream. This is my fantasy. And he allowed himself then to become the icon for millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of sublimated men all around the world who weren't getting laid. So let's move on to our last subject of the day. Now we've got about 850 people with us. We would normally have well over 2,000 or 3,000, but our YouTube has taken us down in the last week or so. So we're having to reboot ourselves elsewhere. Sovereign, are we down for good on YouTube, or is it just a strike? Are we off temporarily?
Yeah, we're off temporarily.
Okay, we're being reprimanded. How long for? Do you know?
Until January.
Until January. Well, nonetheless, the 850 people who are joining us, you're our true family. We care about you more than the others anyway. So we'll just crack on as we are. Our last subject today is a very contemporaneous figure, let's say. You couldn't possibly put this unbridled bitch into the saintly category. She's very much in the category of the sinner, if you understand the deviancy connected to her atmosphere and her ecosystem and to the culture that she has really cultivated around her own image over many, many years. And that is Marina Abramovic, a kind of artist person, one of those people who kind of stands on one leg in the corner of a room looking very somber with an upside down crucifix and then charges somebody $500,000 for the day for the work of art. I'm being sarcastic because for me it's reprehensible. She typifies and embodies for me the perversity that comes about through inverting art and beauty and consciousness and taking it into the diabolical realms, masquerading as art. As an artist myself, I take great exception to that kind of travesty, that kind of abomination. I think it's disgusting because it's iconoclasticism of the worst order of magnitude. It's taking evil symbology and afflicting that onto an unsuspecting public. Of course, the unsuspecting public thoroughly deserve to have whatever afflicting them. That's just the geometry of how it plays out. But I'm very interested to know what you make of Marina Abramovic. And again, it would be interesting to spend an hour on a woman like this because I'd be able to show much of what she does. Oh, Lady Gaga, that other venal bitch, excuse me using the language, but I mean it because that is the correct language. And I've determined my gift to myself in my middle age is to use language where it is appropriate and not where it is morally acceptable or, where the norms dictate. But Lady Gaga also typifies and embodies that same inversion logic of taking art, beauty, and consciousness, flipping it on its head and making eating babies off silver platters acceptable and normalizing perversity. And nothing to me could be more more evil in a sense when we're talking about contemporary iconoclasticism. Lady Gaga is a huge fan of Abramovic, as are the Podestas, those perverse brothers, Peter Vors, who are the progenitors of Pizzagate and all the hellish stuff that goes on connected to that, all of which, again, is going to be revealed in the days ahead. Julian Assange's incarceration in Belmarsh prison right now, after some years of having lost his freedom, is connected to trying to unmask that evil. And look what happened to Julian Assange. So these have been dangerous people. The Podestas, John Podesta was very close to Hillary Clinton, was really her go-to guy, the hand of the king, when Hillary was the king, was John Podesta, a vile creature. And Abramovic and that crew very connected. So have a look here at her numbers and tell us what you make of this.
Yes. So Marina's incarnation frequency was at 200. She was born at 200. And as of today, her frequency is 250, which is neutrality. So she's comfortable where she is. Health, she views through the lens of 200, courage. Finances, 55, so apathy. Creativity, 250, again, neutrality. Relationships, 55. So this shows you the manipulation in her relationships area. Personal growth, 125. Philanthropy, 20, which is shame. So her sharing, it's so interesting, it's expressing in the form of shame. Intuition is 75, which is grief. Joy, she enjoys her role 99% of the time. She's 78% in the now, 100% in her ego. Her integrity is at 25%. Self-awareness, 87%. Clarity, 93%. She's 67% aligned with her divine purpose, personal purpose. She's 100% in alignment. And her compassion is at 29%. So that kind of translates into her art, I would say, because she has a lot of grief, shame, apathy attached, and compassion very low. So, yeah.
But those are better numbers than I would have expected. So we all have a tendency to sensationalize things and dramatize things, exacerbate things. I think that's written into the human condition, and I'm certainly no exception. So I would have expected her numbers to be in a hell of a lot worse than that. I would have thought her numbers would be kind of crawling around the Anthony Fauci territory. But again, what is the worst aspect you're looking at here?
Shame, 20, especially in philanthropy, because this is all about the generosity, and her generosity comes with shame. So therefore it's expressed in her art. And all of these, just keep in mind, has to do with unprocessed emotions. So she's someone that has a lot of unprocessed emotions. I'm sure she's gone through a lot of trauma based on this here. And she's expressing it in the darkest way through her art.
And what's her creativity again? Because I didn't put that on the chart.
Yeah,
what is it?
250, neutrality.
Okay, so there you have it. So a very world famous contemporary iconoclastic artist is operating at neutrality.
Yes.
Which means that she's essentially a fraud, presumably, as an artist. That art is there as part of a manipulation tactic. It's not there because she has a creative zest or a zeal for creativity. Is that fair?
I would say she's expressing what her soul is feeling. So what she's feeling, what she's resonating with, which is shame and grief, is coming through in her art. So that's what her art represents.
Really
beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So there will always be a market for anything, pretty much, right? You package it well, you can sell anything.
Fact. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but a couple of comments are saying how incredibly beautiful you are, Elena. Sorry, Alejandro, you don't get the vote today.
Thank you.
It's okay.
But saying how beautiful you are. Okay, I'm looking at comments now. Guys, we're about to wind up the show. We're running 20 minutes past the hour, 880 odd people with us.
Say something.
Please do. Go ahead. Well, I'm just going to look at some questions, but go ahead.
I just found out, actually, a friend of mine shared, because she went to see John of God several times, and she told me that he was channeling Ignatius of Loyola. And how amazing that you actually chose for us to do these two people today, because, and we were thinking the reason John of God's frequency dropped so drastically is he was possessed by darker forces. And I'm thinking because he was channeling this 55 frequency, this is probably why he dropped so much.
Well,
he's embodying the 55 frequency.
So let's look at that, because right now I'm taking a look at this and I'm seeing, okay, Ignatius Loyola, soul 55 frequency, the core frequency, John of God's 55. They also share relationship very closely, 50 with Loyola, 55 with John of God.
That's they share.
In the ego, both 100%. Clarity, both 100%. Low compassion with Loyola was 3%, John of God 18%. Divine purpose, Loyola was 100%, and John of God was 18%. So presumably he absolutely wasn't typifying Ignatius Loyola's soul signature, but he was certainly parallel in some ways.
Well, this is the danger. I think people who incarnate, or characters that incarnate in the shadows, play out their shadow role. But people who incarnate like John of God did at a higher frequency of 400, he channeled and he was trying to embody something he was not, which is the dark force. And this is danger.
To feed his addictions,
Feed his addiction. And that's the danger when people do tend to channel, is who are you channeling? And are you coming from a place of wholeness, or are you coming from a place of scarcity and addiction?
Right. Someone, Jeff Carson, just saying Marina Abramovic produced a play about her life that he worked on in Toronto about 5 years ago. He said it was the most screwed up show he's ever seen in his life. Someone else saying that Abramovic made a piece of art, presumably in Venice, called Spirit Cooking. So that whole spirit cooking thing, which is mixing blood and semen and then imbibing it in these disgusting rituals and fantasies that she and her Hollywood ilk get together. I'm just no, we're talking about clones again. Guys, don't start me on clones. I don't know enough about clones. It's one of the subjects I just haven't had the chance to get into. I haven't met a clone that I'm aware of. I would love to do a soul reading, frequency reading of a clone. So if anyone out there has a clone, we need a name. we need a name.
We did read Consciousness of Robot Sophia. So that was an interesting one. We can share that.
Of course,
she's a 205 frequency.
That's Sophia, right?
Yes.
The robot. She's at 250.
No, 205. 205.
But okay, how does a group of whirring cogs and wheels and digital strips and LED lights and metal have a soul frequency?
Well, because whatever was imprinted into her, right, the information that was placed, she was created in the eye of the beholder. Whoever created her is a human. And the human collective, if we think about it, overall frequency is 225. So she's right around the collective consciousness at the moment. Yeah.
So this lighter, and no, I don't smoke cigarettes, honest. It just happens to be next to me on the table. I stopped smoking years ago. It's nothing to do with that cough. But this lighter, does that have a frequency?
Everything has frequency. Everything is energy before it becomes matter.
So what kind of imprint are we going to be looking at in a cigarette lighter and defining or determining?
Well, it depends. Are we wanting to read the company that created it? Are we wanting to read the frequency of the company, the transparency of the company? So there's several things we can look at.
But that's what I'm getting to. So it's connected to the plasma projection of the humans connected to the object.
Yes.
Very good. Totally get it. So we embed intention, objective, agenda. All those entanglements are plasma projections. They all connect and embed into an object or a dateline or an event or whatever it is. But it is connected to the pranic or the life force projections of the living. That's essentially what we're reading, right?
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, you'd simply be reading isotope frequencies of metal or wood or whatever, right? Which is a different game.
Yes.
A different game. Fascinating. Okay, guys, question for Elena and Alejandro. How does child sex and other abuse affect these readings in the people discussed? Most of them have been abused, that we know. Well, I don't know what you mean by most of them have been abused, Colleen. But do you want to just take a wing at that answer?
Well, the unprocessed emotions play a crucial role on the vibrational frequency of the person, and also in relation to each aspect of their life. So that is what impacts the level of resistance that one finds or that exists within each aspect, and also the level of resistance that we find in the overall frequency.
And we see this, because we're doing, so publicly we're not doing this, but in private readings, we actually look at somebody's lifetime, and you can see the drops, the dips, and the rises whenever people go through very specific emotions, and we're able to pinpoint the emotions, the events that are occurring in people's lives. So yes,
and the persons involved in it as well.
Yeah, we can see that too.
Okay. Someone asking, Marcia McMello asking, is there a way to learn this skill of frequency reading? So the great craft that you do, just touch on that for people looking. Can people learn this? How do they set about it?
Yes, of course. Anyone can learn it.
Yeah, we'll be doing this.
We are working on putting together an online course, and then also after the online course, our idea is to transcend to a live class with hands-on practice training, and that will be more than likely between 3 to 5 days intense training.
And is that with the New Earth University?
Yes.
That's
good. Otherwise, I'd have to hunt you down and kill you guys.
Yes,
I saw that in my dream a few weeks ago.
And here's the thing, for those that are asking, it takes 2 people to do this reading. So just keep in mind, if you want to learn this, you have to have a partner to do this with.
Well, when you say you have to have a partner, it can be just a working partner or
anyone.
But you have to also be a vibrational match to do it. So.
Okay, well, Kelly Corrigan Richards is asking, how do you determine the soul frequencies? So again, that's a mechanical question. How much is it connected to something, to a layman, of using a crystal ball, for instance? How similar, how different is it to that?
I mean, we don't use our intuition. We don't psychically retrieve this information. It's actually using technology, but it's a technology that this has nothing to do with having a cloud space. It has nothing to do with being online. It's offline.
Nothing to do with AI as well. Nothing to do with algorithms.
No,
can we order it on Amazon? That's a joke. Don't give away trade secrets. Not until we've launched the New Earth course, for God's sake.
Yeah. Yeah, no, crystal gazing is a whole other reality, a whole other ballgame. We don't do that. I don't do tarot readings. We don't do any of those things. So no.
But have you guys ever in the past, in your own story, is there anything connected to divinations or clairvoyancy or lucid dreaming, or is any of that stuff?
I mean, I come from an extreme science background, as scientific as can be, pharmacy, So imagine I come from a pharmacy world, functional medicine. I've always been intuitive, and I do use intuition in energy work and testing people for health problems. But besides that, no, I don't use psychic work to communicate with people.
I would say that your intuition comes in handy overall, because it plays an important role when you want to dive in deeper and expand on what you already have found.
Right. Like how we pinpoint things, right? Has to do with, okay, well, this is the set of information we have. Now, where do we go next?
Like a great detective, you must have good intuition.
Right.
Sure. Someone else is asking here. Great question, Valentina, unpronounceable. Canepas. Can the working partner be at a distance?
No.
You got to be
physically together, same place.
But I thought it was double-blind placebo.
It is, but we're not seeing each other. We're next to each other. We're not looking, but we're connected to the same kind of instrument. So it needs to be synchronized.
Exactly.
But in the case of, let's say, me and Debbie, my hardworking, beloved colleague who runs my life. Now, I have the soul frequency of not quite an avatar, but approaching, and she has the soul frequency of a humpback turtle. So, for instance, if the two of us are working together, surely the higher frequency, I'm joking, but what I'm saying is, in a partnership, would the higher frequency not contaminate the lower frequency or affect that, thereby negating the double-blind placebo? That's what I'm getting at.
You have to be very similar in your frequency in many layers. Okay, that's what we want. You have to be more or less of a match. So if you are, let's say, at 500, you want your partner to be within that or higher. But love frequency is critical.
Okay, I take it back. For and on the record, Debbie does not have the soul frequency of a humpback turtle. Okay,
she does. We love Debbie. We love Debbie.
People are asking. Here we go. This is the question. What are Elena and Alejandro frequencies? Are you prepared to divulge or not?
Okay, let's do it.
No. We were, because we're not making it about ourselves. So we decided to keep it. It's not about us. Yeah.
Let's just say that our frequencies are in a very good place.
Okay.
The well-being of humanity.
Yes.
I want a second opinion.
Yes.
Second opinion. Okay, let's take a poll.
Bring all the psychics in and see what they say.
There was someone else asking the question, or was saying that she's a remote. Lydia is saying that she does remote viewing, and she says that it does the same work without the numbers. Well, Lydia, we would have to invite you in to check that, actually. And I tell you what, it might be a really good idea, because Lydia, no joke. I mean, we're really interested, and I work with remote viewers and have done for well over 14, 15 years now, with magnificent effects. So I've got a tremendous respect for remote viewing. And in fact, I think right now we're working with some mutual friends who are also connected to doing incredible remote viewing. So I think that's something which we could maybe bring in and do some interesting tests on that, where if you're up for it, Lydia, reach out to us. And maybe we can contact a couple of other remote viewers that we work with, and we could do some kind of experimental session at some point. Because what I'd like is, Elena and Alejandro, for your technology approach, which I love because it's so dry and so scientific, and it's scalar, and it's not down to your mood or any of your psycho-emotional language. Mm-hmm. I would love to see that alongside a series of other people. We could come up with some key questions, come up with some riddles, maybe lock some odd things inside little boxes somewhere and padlock them away, and we could all try. I'm going to put a question to you. Using the 140,000 vectors that you've got, more or less, to be able to apply to something, does that mean that you could apply vectors in such a way that you end up being able to know what's inside a sealed box somewhere?
Yes. If we know the exact questions to ask, yes.
I love it. So we get a box. I've got a big vault, a big safe in my villa here. And we could get, and I will also pledge to be involved in this experiment, because I've done things like this in the past with Humanitat. And we could get an independent person to put something into the safe, an object or something that is, tangible, something tangible, not too absurd, and then what we could do is we could bring some remote viewers in, and maybe very advanced mystics and people who can also do these divinations, and you guys, and we could have some fun. But we need to set the rules of engagement for that. But it would be fascinating to see who would get to that object. And I know you're thinking the same thing that I am. There's one child in our ecosystem, right? There's a kid in the ecosystem of friends of ours who, at least one, that is probably able to make those prognostications about what's locked inside a vault somewhere without knowing anything. Are you guys up for that?
We could. We'd have to figure out how to do it because we've never read.
It is. Everything is possible.
Well, I'm just thinking ratings, man. You know, ratings. Because I would tune in. I would tune in to watch that. But I think that what I'm loving about this is we're getting to that point now, as a species, as a civilization, as a social culture orientation, that this is becoming important. This stuff, how we begin to reconnect with the subtle body, with our own subtle bodies, and those incredible subdimensional aspects, and hyperdimensional aspects, and intradimensional aspects, and supradimensional aspects of the alpha and the omega, all of which, of course, is nested perfectly in every perfect moment in time. And this is such a time. And thank you both very much for a beautiful session. An hour and a half. I've kept you over an hour and a half. Thank you both so much for that. And folks, let's just decide quickly, what is the next show that we're going to do? We've chosen a bunch of different subjects. If anyone out there wants to quickly throw in ideas, you can, because we'll come back and watch this. But Debbie, help me out here. What have we lined?
Aliens, planets.
You know what we're thinking, Debbie and I? We were talking about doing planets at some point. Wouldn't it be great to do one on all of the sun, the moon, Earth, right? And really get down to I have an idea about the moon, incidentally. But do you think that would be a good one for us to do?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that could be one. What are the other ones that we've planned more or less moving forward?
We talked about rulers, right? Like historical rulers.
Alexander the Great.
Right.
You know, that kind, Tutankhamun, this kind, historical rulers, iconic rulers from history. So people are jumping in now and saying, yes, 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 planets. Laurie is asking for presidents. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And someone above, Lena, my dear friend in Moscow, is asking for Putin. So it would be interesting to do world leaders.
Yeah, we already did Putin in the past.
It's in one of our episodes. Actually.
Yeah.
Please tell me he was good, had good numbers. I love the man.
He's okay.
He's okay. You know, maybe just maybe it takes an okay man to perform that function. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
But you know,
thank you, Alejandro. You are much more convincing than she is. Okay.
Yeah, you know,
that's how we bring balance.
Yes. Yeah. He'll say, I need more people on my side. I'm like, okay. There you go.
All right, Kate. Well, a lot of people are saying they love presidents. Others are saying they really want the idea of planets. I think the planets, guys, if you're there, just quickly, I'm going to give you literally 30 seconds. Type in planets or presidents as your favorite, and I'm going to do a quick toll. Okay. I think the planets are getting it. Someone says Putin has been body snatched, so it's probably pointless doing his reading. Okay. Dolphin. You don't spell dolphin D-O-L-F-I-N. I'm not going to name you because I don't want to embarrass you in front of 1,000 people. Planets, presidents, planets. The planets have it. Planets. Thank you, guys. All right. You don't need to. The planets have it. Good. Should we do planets next time?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it.
Done. All right. Guys, love you. Thank you. And thank you to Sovereign. And thank you to Debbie. I'll turn the camera so you can see this is what our studio looks like. That's our studio.
Wonderful.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us and for staying on for such a long time. So many of you. And we'll see you ASAP. I don't know when our next show is planned, but I have a feeling we're going to be moving toward a weekly one if you guys can schedule it and if I can do it, because people are loving this and I'm loving it. So much to be learned from this. Thank you both so much and much love.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, folks. Bye now.
Bye.
Ciao. Thank you.